I think everybody needs to write every day if you want to be an author. And mainly because I see writing almost as like going to the gym. It's like exercising, as if there's a writer muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets, the easier it gets to do. So I think it's important that authors do that. Yeah, I tend to overwrite quite a bit. When I first started off, I was what they call a pantser. I basically came up with my characters, my plot, threw it all together, and just started writing. I had no idea where the story was going. Typically, I had a beginning, a middle, and an end in mind. As long as I had some type of ending in the back of my subconscious, my brain would eventually get me there. So it all kind of worked. But I overwrote a lot, so I would finish up a novel. It would end up being, maybe 150, 160,000 words. And then I would have to trim it back and I'd cut it down to like 100 to 110. So a lot of words hit the cutting room floor. I didn't realize I was doing that to that extent until I started writing with James Patterson. And we were on, it was either our first or second book. I can't remember which one, but there was a particular scene. It was a dinner scene. So we had characters sitting around, they were eating dinner. Very important information had to be communicated. So I figured that was a good way to just kind of get it out there. But it was a chapter. It was 1,200, 1,500 words or whatever. I sent those pages off to him. He called me back and he's like, is there any reason we can't just say they had dinner, 3 words, and then take this sentence here and put it over here? And he just pointed out another spot in the book where that pertinent information worked. So all of a sudden we, chopped 1,500 words out of the novel and made it that much more clear and concise. For me as an author, I needed to see that dinner play out. I needed to see these characters sitting across the table from each other, the facial expressions, the conversation taking place. I needed to see that happen, but it didn't necessarily need to be part of the story. So it could be trimmed down. So when I go back through a book, I look for that kind of thing. Where is a paragraph that could be, taken down to 2 or 3 words? Where's a chapter that could be drilled down and maybe placed somewhere else? When I was working as a book doctor, one of the biggest mistakes I always saw people do, they would start like their book, basically creating their world. They would introduce the characters, they would introduce the situation. All these things would happen in the first and second chapter or so. And then all of a sudden they would actually get into the story. So a lot of the book doctor projects I did, I would take that first or second chapter and just completely cut it out of the book. I'd figure out where the action actually started. That would become my new chapter 1. And then any information that was in those first couple of chapters that I cut, I just find some other place in the book to put it, where it made a little bit more sense and maybe you could spread it out a little bit.